Welcome to Hysteria's Get In Losers, We're Running for Office tour. We're back for part 2 of our road trip. This summer, we're making stops along the way to meet some of our favorite female 2024 candidates. They're working tirelessly across the country trying to unfuck their states and make the U.S. better. So buckle up and get ready to vote, and also donate or volunteer if the spirit moves you. We'll need these ladies in the driver's seat. Buckle up, everyone. We're driving just over 1,000 miles to the Gulf of Mexico. We're meeting up with Sarah Henry of Florida, who is running to flip House District 38. Republicans have a supermajority in the Florida State House, so we need all the Democratic representatives we can get. A fun fact we love about Sarah, her first job was as an abortion clinic escort. Sarah, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so listen, I understand that your passion for politics began when you were in elementary school and did an assignment about the laws you would change as President of the United States. Please do not keep me in suspense. What were they?
Well, first of all, yeah, that's how I got started. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Ogden, shout out. She had this great assignment, and I think some of my principles around like cake for dinner did not make it to today's platform, but was definitely critical, at age 7 or so. That was a big piece of my platform. But I grew up in a pretty politically engaged household, so even then, a lot of my thoughts around what was fair was around education and food equity. Growing up in the Midwest, you're really surrounded by that kind of agriculture, and you're always kind of thinking about where food production is coming and going, and that's kind of always been really foundational to my political platform.
So Sarah, you're in Seminole County, Florida. We read a lot about Florida, and a lot of times it's not good. You guys it's a hot mess down there. So can you tell listeners what the stakes of this race are? Why do you need to win?
Yeah, it couldn't be higher. And like you referenced, Florida's legislature is in a supermajority position right now. So Republicans have complete control of the state with a supermajority in both chambers of the legislature. And of course, our infamous governor, Ron DeSantis. So in Florida, we actually in the state house, need to maintain all of the seats we currently hold, and then we need to flip just 5 seats in order to get out of that super minority position. Exactly. So we're so close, and there's so much momentum this year. The seat I'm running for, House District 38, is actually the most flippable seat in the Florida House this cycle. We have some incredible momentum in terms of our own campaign. We've knocked on almost 8,000 doors here in the district, and I've been in the race for about 15 months. So we've been out in every neighborhood and HOA meeting and yard sale and Little League tournament and everything else you can imagine, trying to make sure that voters know what's at stake. But it's not just the legislative seats. We also have 2 ballot amendments this year. One would legalize recreational marijuana, and the other would overturn our existing 6-week abortion ban and return those decisions to who they rightfully belong with, right? Women, pregnant people, and their doctors.
So Sarah, what are your top issues? What motivated you to get into the race?
Yeah, I think abortion justice and reproductive rights as a whole is such a critical issue. Like you mentioned, I got my start as a volunteer abortion clinic escort, and the idea that Republican legislators in the state of Florida, including my opponent, are working to control not just, one choice, not just our bodies in that moment, but realistically working to control our destinies and the lives that we're able to build for ourselves. I think it speaks to what their priorities are, and certainly speaks to why we need, young women running to speak to these issues and say, I'm not going to tolerate the control of my body and the control of my daughter's bodies in that way. That's key. I think that's really foundational, not just for me, but across the state this cycle.
Sarah, one question. When you're out at the bake sales, when you're going door to door, what is top of mind for people? What are they most concerned about going into the election?
We hear about a couple different things. In Seminole County, one of our key economic drivers is actually our public school system. We're unique. Obviously, Central Florida is known for tourism, but our economic driver is actually folks moving to the region to take advantage of exceptional public schools. And so a lot of the issues that we talk about are in that frame, right? When we talk about cost of living, it's, can I afford to stay in the neighborhood I moved to so that my child could go to this school? When we talk about classrooms, it's, are there enough teachers who can afford to live here to teach the students that we've brought here? Even when we talk about things like environmental safety, climate change, there's a lot of conversations around, we want to live in an area that's safe from flooding, and we want to live here because this is where our public school is. And so I think our district is a little bit unique in that way, which is that a lot of these conversations, gun violence, environmental safety, they're all in that reference of, does this make sense for my young family?
Speaking of, were you hit by Hurricane Debbie?
We were thankfully out of the path. So yeah, we came through completely safe, and we're making sure that folks across the district have the resources they need if they did experience any flooding. But yeah, thankfully we were not in the direct line this time. But it's just a matter of time, right? With the Gulf warming and hurricanes worsening, and even just our standard, Florida sunstorms in the afternoon getting worse. Those concerns are more significant now than they were even 10 years ago.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us here on Hysteria. Listeners, if you want to learn more about Sarah, go to sarahforflorida.com. That's sarahforfl.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Okay, we're starting out our road trip in eastern Pennsylvania. Our first candidate, Anna Thomas, is trying to flip House District 137. In 2022, the Pennsylvania State House flipped from red to blue, but the Dems are holding on to a one-seat majority. To help keep the Pennsylvania House blue, we've got to go elect Anna. Anna, how are you?
I'm doing so good, Alyssa. How about you?
I am good. So, Anna, I am genuinely a little intimidated here. Growing up, you were the student representative to the Bethlehem Area School Board. You went to Wellesley, where you got a degree in chemistry. You were on the NCAA rowing team. While you were earning your master's in public administration from UPenn, you completed your thesis in partnership with the Philly Police Department's Crime Prevention and Violence Reduction Plan. Girl, you have seen a lot. What made you decide to run? Why are you in this race?
Oh my gosh, I am a hometown kid through and through. And growing up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania was the most impactful life experience that I think could have brought me into anything, and especially public service. When I was a kid growing up, I saw my friends and my friends' parents commute to Manhattan, commute to Philly, spending, combined maybe upwards of 24 hours in the car every single week, right? Time that they could have spent with their friends and loved ones. And that was probably my earliest insight into how things could actually get better for people. We could build public transit that actually lets you get to your job faster and lets you spend more time with your kids. And then when I got older, the thing that pushed me to serve on my school board was that the state of Pennsylvania cut over $1 billion from public education. And directly as a result of that, my favorite teacher ended up getting furloughed. So it was a tremendous life experience in that it really pushed me into activism. And I wasn't able to save my teacher's job, unfortunately, but what I was able to do was serve in this capacity on the school board, but also permanently understand that state and local government is where quality of life issues really get solved.
That is absolutely the truth. What do you see as the biggest issues facing your community right now, and how do you hope to address them?
Always, especially in 2024, protecting reproductive health care across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I am running against someone who has voted to ban abortion in Pennsylvania. And, when I get elected, I would be the only woman under the age of 30 to serve in the state legislature or in state government. And so I take it very seriously that we continue to protect that basic freedom for all. And then aside from those basic, fundamental human rights, things that we all need to fight for and preserve as a state, it's all about making sure that quality of life is high for everyone. And I think part of that is dealing with cost of living. Pennsylvania has some of the worst corporate tax loopholes in the entire country. And you have multi-state and multinational corporations that don't report any profit in Pennsylvania, so therefore they don't have to pay any taxes. Whereas our mom and pop shops are the only businesses that pay corporate taxes in Pennsylvania, right? If you think about it.
It's crazy.
So I am, fundamentally driven by this desire for fairness, and that's what really pushes me to do this work now when I'm running.
So Anna, you're the child of immigrants. Does that give you any particular perspective you wish other people could understand?
I think that if I have if I have anything that I would share with any child of immigrants in America, it would be, you need to push yourself into that seat at the table. And sometimes your own community will be, I think, approaching calls to public service or runs for public office from a sense of, fear, which makes sense. I think that coming to a new country, there's a lot of uncertainty, but we are a nation founded by immigrants, and we need that community continue to be represented in government. I look at my parents and their journey of, becoming Americans as this really beautiful thing that has inspired me deeply, where, my parents from a very young age have always told me the highest aspiration that I could have would be to serve my community. And so I'm really grateful that I can do that, but, we've got to make sure that we continue to carve out that seat at the table for ourselves and for our neighbors.
Listeners, we have to keep Pennsylvania blue. To learn more about Anna, head to AnnaRThomas.com. Anna, thank you for joining me on Hysteria this week.
It was a blast, Alyssa. Thanks for having me.
After a long road, we only have a couple 100 miles left to go. We're headed to Las Vegas, Nevada, where we're meeting up with Senator Dallas Harris. Dallas is running to keep her seat in Nevada's 11th district. Policy decisions are tough in such a purple swing state, and Nevadans really need Dallas to keep fighting for them. Dallas, I am obsessed with you. I am obsessed with you. We're going to jump right into it because you've been in the Nevada State Senate since 2019. And is it true that you helped secure a 20% pay raise for Clark County teachers this past year?
It was a top priority, and we got it done. Yeah, let's do it everywhere across the country.
Love that. So Dallas, you describe yourself as a policy nerd at heart. You've worked for the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada and also Southern Nevada Legal Aid. What did you experience in those jobs that prompted you to run for office?
Well, it's good old-fashioned consumer protection. There are often a lot of times that the government kind of steps in and is really trying to keep markets in check. That's what the Public Utilities Commission is about. We regulate a monopoly, which is the utility, the energy utility, and often the gas utility as well. And so our job is to balance the interest of consumers and those shareholders of those companies. And policy is where the rubber meets the road, where people get those electricity services. We make sure they can afford them. There's great programs for folks who are seniors or who may be down on their luck. That's what government can do for people. And so I've seen it. I have a master's degree in public policy, and I thought, what a better way to give back to my community than to become a legislator. Here I am.
I love that. When I was an intern, I got into politics because I was an intern for Bernie Sanders in 1995. And the magic to me, people talk about politics. I hate politics, but public service was what I saw as an intern when every Monday he wanted to see all of our case files. And by Friday, most of them better be solved or he was going to be pissed. And so I love the magic that you are bringing back to public service. So what are the stakes of your race? Why is it so critical that you win your seat?
Well, it's because we've got a lot to do. We've got to keep going. If you take a look at the record that we've had as Democrats in the state of Nevada in control of the legislature, it is unbelievable. And we want to keep that train pushing. We're the first female majority legislature in the country.
I did not know that.
We established that in 2019, and we've been able to hold it. Alyssa, I can tell you, I don't even know what it's like to serve in a majority male legislature.
Fuck all, that's amazing.
We're going to keep that going by electing me and making sure that we pass policies that are not just good for women. As we all know, when women are elected, they pass policies that's good for everybody, for families, for our society. That's what we've done, and we got to keep going. We're not going to go back, as Kamala just said. We're not going back.
In your great state, too, we want to send Jackie Rosen back to the U.S. Senate. Love our girl, Jackie.
Oh my goodness, the Senate is just on the line, and all roads come through Nevada.
So, other things I read about you, you love to debate on the merits. But do you have advice for folks when they're going door to door, canvassing, or encounter folks who are not debating from the facts? How do you engage with people who are sort of like debating from another planet?
Well, you know what? That always comes from somewhere. One thing that I've learned in this era of Trumpism is that people have felt left behind, right? People have felt that the government hasn't worked for them, and it's just kind of manifested in these really weird ways, right?
Right.
And so we've got to reach out to those people and show them how government can work for them and that government does in fact care about them. You show them the proof is in the pudding, right? Let's bring them better results. Let's bring them lower healthcare prices. Let's make it easier for people to survive and thrive. And I think we'll all be better off.
I love that. Barack Obama always used to say to lead with curiosity, that we never know what circumstances or like where people get their news, and that if you just ask them questions, sometimes their minds will be much more open than if you sort of just attack them with your facts, which are usually facts, but So I always like to say lead with curiosity. And so I just have to tell you before we wrap up that you graduated from Green Valley High School.
I did.
You did, and that is where, in 2010, we hosted a town hall with Senator Harry Reid, who, by the way, I think you both went to the same law school. You went to GW Law, right?
We did, and I also had the pleasure of interning for him
No
over
way!
the summer. Yeah, in the summer of 2009. I was on the Hill.
My husband was his chief of staff for many years before he was my husband. And so our second date was at Green Valley High School at a town hall. And so I just had to tell you that.
That sounds right.
The world is small.
It sure
Dallas, you're a star. Listeners, if you want to learn more about Dallas, go to her website, dallasharrisfornevada.com, and we will link it in show notes. Dallas, thank you so much for joining us on Hysteria today.
Thanks for having me.
Get ready for another hefty leg of this trip. We're crossing the country, driving over 2,000 miles to Maricopa County, Arizona. Yes, that Maricopa County, Arizona, to meet up with Senator Eva Birch. She's running to stay in her vulnerable seat in District 9. Eva is a powerhouse. She shared her abortion story earlier this year when fighting for reproductive rights in her state, and we do not want to lose her. Eva, I am so excited to have you here. If you ever listen to this podcast, you know we celebrate our nurses, and you are a nurse. Emergency nursing, nonetheless. Eva, what is it that you saw as a nurse that prompted you to run for office back in 2022?
Well, that's the perfect question, because really that was where this all began for me. When I was working in the emergency department, something that I saw that bothered me deeply was that people got different treatment plans based on a number of things that I didn't think should matter. I think that we most notably think about insurance status, whether or not they have insurance. And absolutely, yes, that mattered. But also whether or not they spoke English, whether or not they had suffered from food insecurity or housing insecurity, gaps in education, gender and racial disparities. All of these things could absolutely and did absolutely impact the treatment that they got in the emergency department. And I knew that that translated to other healthcare settings as well. And that was really motivating for me. It didn't motivate me straight away to run for office. It made me go back to school. I wanted to get on the other side of the orders. And so I became a nurse practitioner and started working as a provider, and realized just how much worse it was than I thought. Instead of really being in a position where I could make it better, I felt like I was in a position where I had my hands tied more than ever. And so that got me interested in policy, which brought me to where I am today.
So, Eva, what values, I think this is so interesting because I heard you talk about it. What values as a nurse do you bring to the Arizona State Senate?
I think that what we have to look at is, of course, altruism and autonomy and dignity and all of those things. But something that always really stuck with me, we have a code of ethics for nurses, and it talks very specifically about how the need for and right to healthcare is universal and that it transcends all individual differences. And that code of ethics has really become my practice Bible and what I really try to live my life by. What are we doing to make sure that everybody has equitable access to high quality healthcare, regardless of their economic status or all of these other things that can impact their outcomes and their quality? Do we believe that people have inherent dignity and inherent worth, and that there are certain things that we are all entitled to as human beings? Or do we believe that the thing that is most important is whether or not people can afford their care? And that's an easy answer for me. And I think that I've really sort of become an evangelist for that in the legislature, wanting to make sure that I'm holding people accountable to what we really believe in our core about how people should be able to access healthcare and whether or not we all deserve that.
Eva, what are your top issues and how are you already working on them as a senator?
Obviously, healthcare is top priority for me. It was sort of forced into reproductive healthcare being at the top of those concerns because of how incredibly inhospitable it became in Arizona to be a person who was pregnant. And certainly during a time that I was pregnant, it was a scary and inhospitable place for somebody to be pregnant. So that has become a really high priority for me. We were, of course, able to repeal this really terrible Civil War era ban that existed. I am concerned constantly that people think that this means that we've solved the problem, or that they think that if they vote for this ballot initiative that we have on abortion in November, that means that we've solved the problem. But that is absolutely not going to be the case. So we have to have pro-choice candidates from the top to the bottom of the ticket to make sure that we are protecting reproductive health care in Arizona. The other issues that have been really important to me are absolutely housing. Something that we have serious problems in Arizona. It's becoming totally unaffordable, even for entry-level homes for anyone. For a couple, both working full-time jobs, it is still almost prohibitively expensive and difficult to get into a home. The interest rates are high. The amount of money that's needed for a down payment, even on a very entry-level home, is just unattainable for too many people in Arizona. So that's a really high priority as well. And I would say education, if I had to throw a third on it, is top priority for us here. We have an assault on our public education system, and we are leaching money from the public system into the private sector to fund parochial and private schools that really have a student base that doesn't need that help as much as our public school population does. So those are three things that are really critical, that are incredibly important. A lot of the work that I have done in the legislature involves bills that have come through to help expand access to affordable housing, and also what we do in the budget negotiations to make sure that we have enough money to maintain what we need to in our public schools. It's certainly not enough. We are woefully underfunded in our education system here in Arizona, but we do everything that we can to make sure that we can at least maintain and offer some reasonable standards for our public school students here in Arizona.
Eva, thank you so much for joining me on Hysteria today. Listeners, if you want to learn more about Eva, go to evafораrizona.com, EVA for Arizona.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Keep up your good work.